I invite the attention of the General Assembly to the resignation from the Human Rights Council as communicated by the permanent representative of the Russian Federation to the United Nations in a letter to the President of the General Assembly dated 7 April 2022, effective the same date. As one vacancy has occurred in the Council, a new member must be elected to fill the unexpired term of the Russian Federation. Before we proceed further, members will recall that the General Assembly concluded its consideration of sub-item D of Agenda Item 116 at its 19th plenary meeting on 14 October 2021. For the Assembly to proceed today with the election of one member of the Council to fill the vacancy, it will be necessary to reopen consideration of the sub-item. May I take it? It is the wish of the General Assembly to reopen consideration of sub-item D of Agenda Item 116. So decided. The Assembly will now resume its consideration of sub-item D of Agenda Item 116 in order to hold a by-election to elect a member of the Human Rights Council, pursuant to Resolution 60/251 of 15 March 2006, and taking into account that the vacancy occurred from among the Eastern European states, the new members should be elected from that region. The new members shall be elected directly and individually by secret ballot by the majority of the members of the General Assembly. Excuse me, losing my voice. Accordingly, 97 votes would constitute a majority in the General Assembly, which has a membership of 193 states. The new member, thus elected, shall be considered to be serving its first term of office beginning on the date of election and expiring on 31 December 2023, and if re-elected for a subsequent term of office beginning on 1 January 2024, would then begin serving its second consecutive term in the context of paragraph 7 of Resolution 60/251, in which the GA decided that, quote, members of the Council shall not be eligible for immediate re-election after 2 consecutive terms. I should like to inform the members that currently the following states from among Eastern European states are represented on the Human Rights Council: Armenia, Lithuania, Montenegro, Poland, and Ukraine. The names of these 5 states should therefore not appear on the ballot. The election will be held in accordance with the relevant rules of procedure of the General Assembly on elections. For this election, Rules 92 and 93 of the Rules of Procedure of the General Assembly shall be applied, and balloting shall continue until one candidate receives the votes cast by the majority of the members of the General Assembly. Accordingly, the election shall be held by secret ballot. Consistent with past practice, if, due to a tie vote, it becomes necessary to determine one candidate that will proceed to the next round of restricted balloting, there will be a special restricted ballot limited to those candidates that have obtained an equal number of votes. May I take it that the General Assembly agrees with the proposed way forward? So decided. For the one vacant seat for East European states, the Secretariat has received a communication from one candidate, namely the Czech Republic. I have also been informed by the Secretariat that voluntary pledges and commitments made by member states in accordance with operative paragraph 8 of General Assembly Resolution 60/251 were issued as an official document of the 76th session of the General Assembly. Before we begin the voting process, I should like to remind members that, pursuant to Rule 88 of the Rules of Procedure of the General Assembly, no representative shall interrupt the voting except on a point of order on the actual conduct of the voting. We shall now begin the voting process. Members are requested to remain seated until all ballots have been collected. Ballot papers marked will now be distributed. I request representatives to use only those ballot papers. In addition, ballot papers will only be given to the delegates seated directly behind the country's nameplate. The voting has thus begun. In accordance with General Assembly Resolution 71/323 of 8 September 2017, the name of the state that has been communicated to the Secretariat at least 48 hours prior to the election today has been printed on the ballot paper for the one regional group concerned. Also, an additional blank line corresponding to the number of the vacant seats to be filled for the regional group has been provided on the ballot paper for inscribing another state as necessary. Members are requested to put an X in the box next to the name printed on the ballot paper or write the name of another eligible state on the blank line. If the box next to the name printed on the ballot paper is checked, the name of that state does not need to be repeated on the blank line. There should be no more than one checked box or handwritten name for the vacant seat to be filled, as indicated in the ballot paper. A ballot will be declared invalid if it contains votes for more than one eligible member state from the group of Eastern European states. If a ballot paper contains only a vote for a member state that does not belong to the group of Eastern European states, or for a member state from that region that is a current member of the Council, the ballot paper will be declared invalid, since the present election is a by-election for the one vacant seat from the Eastern European group. Finally, if a ballot paper contains any notation other than a vote in favor of an eligible member state, those notations will be disregarded. I invite the representatives of the following states to serve as tellers and to accompany the conference officers as they collect the ballot papers: Bulgaria, Chile, Ghana, Jamaica, Malaysia, and New Zealand. Please proceed to collect the ballot papers. Okay, please proceed to collect the ballot papers. No more? They have? Have they? All right, I'll just repeat again. Please proceed to collect the ballot papers. May I request delegations who may not have voted to do so now by approaching the front of the hall to cast their votes. The voting is now closed. No more ballot papers will be accepted. In the interest of time, the General Assembly will now proceed to consider the other items announced in the United Nations Journal while the ballots are being counted. The General Assembly has thus concluded this stage of its consideration of sub-item D of Agenda Item 116. The General Assembly will now resume its consideration of Agenda Item 20, entitled Sustainable Development, to take action on a draft decision issued as document A/76/L.53. We shall now proceed to consider draft decision A/76/L.53. Okay. The Assembly will now take action on draft decision A/76/L.53, entitled International Meeting, entitled Stockholm +50, A Healthy Planet for the Prosperity of All, Our Responsibility, Our Opportunity. May I take it? It is the wish of the General Assembly to adopt draft decision A/76/L.53. So decided. Speakers, the General Assembly has thus concluded this stage of its consideration of Agenda Item 20. The Assembly will now consider the report of the Special Political and Decolonization Committee, Fourth Committee, on Agenda Item 56, entitled Comprehensive Review of the Whole Question of Peacekeeping Operations in All Their Aspects, issued as document A/76/418/Addendum 1. The positions of delegations regarding the recommendation of the committee have been made clearly in the committee and are reflected in the relevant official records. Therefore, if there is no proposal under Rule 66 of the Rules of Procedure, I shall take it that the General Assembly decides not to discuss the report of the committee which is before the Assembly today. It is so decided. Okay. Statements will therefore be limited to explanations of vote. May I remind members that in accordance with the General Assembly Decision 34/401, when the same draft resolution is considered in the main committee and in plenary meeting, a delegation should, as far as possible, explain its vote only once, that is, either in the committee or in the plenary meeting, unless the delegation's vote in plenary meeting is different from its vote in the committee, and that explanations of vote are limited to 10 minutes and should be made by delegations from their seats. Before we take action on the report of the committee, I should like to advise representatives that we will proceed to take a decision in the same manner as was done in the committee, unless notified otherwise in advance. The General Assembly has before it a draft resolution recommended by the committee in paragraph 6 of its report. The Assembly will now take a decision on the draft resolution. The committee adopted the draft resolution without a vote. May I take it that the Assembly wishes to do the same? So decided. May I take it that it is the wish of the Assembly to conclude its consideration of Agenda Item 56? So decided. The General Assembly will now resume its consideration of Sub-Item H of Agenda Item 117 on the appointment of members of the Board of the 10-year Framework of Programs on Sustainable Consumption and Production Patterns. Members will recall that at its 61st and 62nd plenary meeting on 15 and 18 March 2022, respectively, the General Assembly appointed Costa Rica, Croatia, Kuwait, Mauritius, Pakistan, Senegal, Sweden, and the United States of America as members of the Board of the 10-year Framework of Programs on Sustainable Consumption and Production Patterns for a term beginning on the date of appointment and ending on 14 March 2024. Members will also recall that one vacancy each from Eastern European states and Latin and American and Caribbean states remains to be filled for a term of office beginning on the date of appointment and ending on 14 March 2024. In this regard, the Secretariat has received the nomination of Brazil. May I take it that the General Assembly wishes to appoint Brazil as a member of the Board of the 10-year Framework of Programs on Sustainable Consumption and Production Patterns for a term beginning on 10 May 2022 and ending on 14 March 2024. I don't hear any objection. It is so decided. Members are reminded that one vacancy from the Eastern European states remains to be filled for a term of office beginning on the date of appointment and ending on 14 March 2024. The General Assembly has thus concluded this stage of its consideration of Sub-Item H of Agenda Item 117. I now wish to suspend the meeting while the ballots for the election of a member of the Human Rights Council are still being counted. The meeting is suspended. The plenary meeting is resumed. The General Assembly will resume its consideration of Sub-Item D of Agenda Item 116 entitled Election of Members of the Human Rights Council. The result of the voting is as follows. Number of ballot papers, 180. Number of invalid ballots, 0. Number of valid ballots, 180. Abstentions, 23. Number of members present and voting, 157. Required majority, 97. Number of votes obtained by each member state, Czech Republic, 157. Having obtained the required majority, the Czech Republic has thus been elected as a member of the Human Rights Council for a term of office beginning 10 May 2022 and ending on 31 December 2023. I congratulate the Czech Republic on having been elected a member of the Human Rights Council. This concludes our consideration of Sub-Item D of Agenda Item 116. The meeting is adjourned. Is that it? Yeah. Finished? Yeah. no more item.
Good.